one question I wanted to ask you, could you just give a brief explanation about what the study was? What was the impetus behind the study?
Well, the impetus came about because I had some 10 years ago decided to start measuring private giving, first from the U.S. to the developing world, and then from as many other countries as I could get, particularly developed countries. And this impetus was because people were calling America stingy, because the common measure for a country's generosity was their government foreign aid as a percent of their gross national income. And because I had served in Africa and I was then serving as a presidential appointee at AID, I knew that didn't sound right, because I had lived in developing countries and seen missionaries and NGOs and foundations, and I just asked the question, well, how much do they give? And when I couldn't get the answer, I decided to measure that. And what we found was that global philanthropy from the U.S. and also from other countries far exceeds their government aid. And we really, I think, helped change the entire discussion of what is giving, and we chose a technique of what I call a country's total economic engagement with the developing world. And why should we be just looking at one financial flow and not all of them? So when that report became very popular, it's now used in academies and used by the World Bank and government agencies and policymakers, I decided there is another side of the coin to that, and that is, since these private flows are so important, what do we know about what is impeding them?
Well, a little bit along those lines, you talked about how you examined the incentives and barriers to giving. Can you explain a little bit about what you meant by that?
Yes, I can. Incentives would be, how easy is it for a non-governmental organization or a foundation to register in a country? Are there barriers put up by a country saying, well, you have to have at least $1 million and you have to have a board of 30 or whatever those barriers might be? And then we also looked at the operations of a non-governmental organization, both as givers, and we found that in some cases there were onerous reporting requirements and things like that. And third, can a government involuntarily dissolve an organization for whatever reason they want? And that's an important barrier as well. And on the tax side, we really looked for incentives. And those incentives were, are there tax credits given? Are there tax deductions? Are there tax exemptions? And both for the donor and for the receiver. And the final thing, of course, we looked at was cross-border giving. Do the countries put on taxes for sending money across borders? Do they allow money to be sent out of their country? Do they allow money to come in, or does that money have to be approved by a government agency, or whatever other barriers? So those are some of the things that we looked at in a very detailed, in-depth questionnaire.
So then can you give us a little bit of an insight as to what some of the results that you found, and were any of them surprising?
Well, we had some basic trends that were very interesting to me, and one of them was that the term illicit financial flows, which most donors understand, and these are flows that get out of a country without any taxation. They could be going to terrorist groups or other illicit causes. And we found, though, that the legislation that has come up around those flows is important, obviously. You know, we have to catch the bad guys, and we want our financial systems and regulatory systems to be doing the right thing. But without realizing it, the regulations that have come up around those have created a big barrier for legitimate NGOs in registering and in their operations. So, in fact, we found in half of our countries surveyed, half of our 64 countries surveyed, that the illicit financial flows legislation was one of the biggest barriers. And so I think I hope to be meeting with Treasury officials and finding out ways that we can perhaps recommend ways that organizations can help NGOs and donors in developing countries try to streamline that, or try to figure out what techniques our own Treasury Department is using to ferret out the good guys from the bad guys.
Mm-hmm. So you will be participating in the annual meeting this October for the Philanthropy Roundtable. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you'll be discussing this study. It'll be a topic. Anything else you'd like to explain about what you hope to bring up at that meeting?
Well, I want to bring up I want to show the results, and I want to show how policies do matter, and policymakers can make a difference. But we need to know what they have to do, and so that's the importance of the study, because every question that we asked was very detailed. They didn't just, it wasn't just, do you have a tax regime, or do you allow deductions? We had our country experts go into how much do you allow deductions, at what levels and what percentages. And so when you have the answer to the questions in our survey, you have the obvious solution. So what we want to do is to grow this information, get it out there so that it will work much like the World Bank Doing Business report, which measures how easy it is for a company to repatriate profits and hire people and fire people. And so we want it to play that type of role where you measure a phenomenon and then you rank the countries differently, and then you compare them and publicize the heck out of it. And so I think that what is exciting about our new study on philanthropic freedom is that it is an example of indicator-based competition in new areas of the social sciences. So, because it's the first time that it's been done for philanthropy. So, but it isn't just that we have the research and we can rank countries and name and shame. We want to change policies. And the theory behind index-based competition is that once you do that, it will improve, based on the British physicist Lord Kelvin, who said if you measure it, you will improve it. And that's the theory behind the Six Sigma management theory of change. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so we want to see this, if this same theory is going to work in philanthropy. And so far, it's starting in small ways. I've received a few angry calls from some embassies of why they were ranked lower than one country than another. So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
When you got people complaining, then you know that you've got to be putting out something that's accurate, right?
Exactly.
Well, we'll look forward to having you at the annual meeting.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll be able to share a little bit more on as your research continues to grow, and we'll see what results you're able to come up with in the future.
Good. Thank you. Looking forward to it.